Ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Good morning. It's always quite daunting to come into these environments, especially when you've had three eminent speakers prior to me coming in. If I didn't think my stress level had gone through the roof, where Harry Burns had described that, my level's right up through the roof at the moment. What I thought I would try to do was to try to take some of the really big things that have been said today to see how that translates into reality in the context of a school environment. I am a former high school head teacher, in which I was in a school in East Kilbride in South Lanarkshire, where I'm now a head of education. And I'm also a PE teacher to trade, so physical education is my background. So it is the thing I'm interested in, and it is the thing I do think that can make the difference. What I will try to do, though, is to look at it in a practical context, what it might mean, and what it might mean for all of us as we try to implement health and well-being for young people. And the first question I would ask, is it your mission? Where we've spoken about our vision and mission, the question would be in your own establishments and in your own countries, is it the thing that drives you? That's the school I was in's mission, where we spoke about, and we had a big exercise of engaging people about what would our mission within the school be. Our vision was work together to inspire learning and shape the future, and that was the mission. And within it, we were clear to say that we were a community of learners about transforming lives, and of course the important parts for me, we care for each other, that we would put it in our DNA as a school and in our establishments, a place in which it was nurturing and where all of us within the community flourished. And I think that can be sometimes quite a big ask. I wanted to put the word love into it. I went around the school and said I'd like to put love in. They thought I was mad. They thought I was absolutely not sane when it came to it. We compromised over the word we care for each other, but it was putting front and centre in a school context that we would look after each other, and that would be a significant thing for us as we looked at well-being. The other part, of course, was it a strength-based school? I think, again, that's easier said than done. Did you have a series of whole school approaches, or can we see a series of whole school approaches? Do we see at the moment where our schools and establishments collectively get together? Does it filter right into the classroom? Are we able to see strategies that are working within the classroom? I would argue that we can do it. Is it built on outstanding relationships within the school environment, that young people are known as individuals, irrespective of the size of your establishment, from the smallest rural schools that we have to our largest establishments which have over 1,800 young people within them? Are those young people known as individuals? And do we care for them? And are we able to show that on a day-to-day basis? The outstanding relationships between staff and between the community itself. Is there a can-do attitude, as we've spoken about? And of course, that's built on lots of work. I've a slide next about the work of Seligman or Carol Dweck. I think we're familiar with many of the activities and much of the research that goes along with it as well. Does the learner know themselves well? Are they able to know themselves as a learner, not just about what their strengths are from a knowledge point of view, but the skills they have, and also about their well-being? And what do we do about it? And is there a high expectation and ambition for people to do well, recognising that they will not all go on to study high tariff courses at university, but for the people they become, have we managed to have as highest aspiration and expectation of those young people as possible? Just as I said, Martin Seligman does talk about that notion. I saw Harry Burns had a reference to Seligman in one of his slides as well. But it is the notion of mindfulness. Is it in your culture and ethos of your establishment? Are we able to identify it? Is it tangible as you walk the corridors, that you see high expectation, that it's bright, it's vibrant, and it's an environment and that people want to be involved in? So that's the notion. How do you actually do it? Well, I think you can give young people a language, and a common language. There are lots of ways of looking at it. There's a variety of mechanisms. You could look at some of the work on identifying character strengths. That's the Penn State questionnaire. I don't know, some of you will be familiar with it. simply equipping young people with the language beyond developing their skills. I am good at working in a team, or I am able to look at my maths and I can solve an equation in algebra. What it does is it tries to give them the language of creativity. It asks them a series of questions, the questionnaire. It gives top 24 strengths for young people. They would then have a language themselves in which they talk about, and it's focused on their strengths. You then get the top 5 signature strengths that come along with it. I see lots of schools in Scotland, it's been an increasing trend in the past couple of years, where they've used that just as one example. Why is it relevant? Young people are able to talk about themselves as, I'm a curious learner. I'm good, I have creativity. There's a love of learning that goes along with it. We did this with staff as a light-hearted way of looking at what we do. Needless to say, leadership was not in my top 5. I was devastated as a school leader because you answer your own questions, I hasten to add. The second thing is that our senior manager, one of our school deputy head teachers that had responsibility for our 15 and 16-year-olds, and if you know, I think 15 and 16-year-olds across the world can sometimes show a lethargy and an apathy sometimes. At the bottom of his list, not at the top, at the bottom was love and mercy. I think that was not unconnected to the job that he was doing in trying to chase 15 and 16-year-olds across the school environments. What it did, though, was it allowed us to say to young people, where are your strengths? And I see schools increasingly use this kind of language. If you can see, and it will, I'm sure it will resonate with you, where the least prevalent character strength in human beings, character strengths, are prudence, modesty, and self-regulation, hence the biscuits. And the child looking at the biscuits, and that's probably more for my benefit as well, the ability to self-regulate. And it was mentioned about what we're asking young people to do and its importance of self-regulation. And whether or not they are creative, whether they show kindness. It's a practical way of young people being able to get a language within a school environment of what they're good at. There's also other practical examples that I've seen as well. The 5 a day for learning and well-being, put up around a school environment. Sorry if you can't quite see it, but it says connect, be active, take notice, give, and keep learning. And the school that was using it was really prominent around the school. It was focused on the assemblies within the school itself, and young people were encouraged to demonstrate the 5 a day for learning and well-being. I've also spotted young people being involved in an act of kindness project. Not the system trying to look at kindness, but just recognising that kindness has an effect on your own well-being, your own kindness, and demonstrating that to other people. There are practical ways in which a whole school takes forward health and well-being as well. For us within a Scottish context, it is an entitlement of our young people, mental, emotional, social and physical. And within the curriculum, the young people are entitled to it. Then obviously you have physical education, you have blocks of personal, social and health education periods that young people will take part in. We have science, we have home economics that will look at healthy food, healthy lifestyles that go along with it. There has been a commitment to say young people must be involved. Of course, the sting in the tail of that is it must be of high quality. There is no point in having a physical education programme, and I say this as a PE teacher, I say it with great pride, as a subject that's tried to really evolve. That it doesn't just say you're going to take part in hockey. This may just translate to Scottish. I love hockey, by the way. Just for those, I know that the Dutch are phenomenal. I think world champions at one stage and Olympic medalists in hockey. But in a cold December day in the school I was in, taking out a group of reluctant conscripts to take part in hockey didn't do much for their physical education or their well-being. In fact, it was counterproductive. And so schools are much more imaginative. I see some people nodding. There's a horrible experience just come into some people's head there. Schools are much more imaginative about the kinds of activities that young people are engaged in, about the choice, about genuine choice. I saw a tweet from a school in one of our local schools, and the young people had scooters, these scooters in which they were moving around the school, and it was part of a PE programme. Now, that challenged me as a PE teacher. I couldn't imagine me demonstrating as I was on the scooter itself. But people are being imaginative in what they do. They are trying to engage young people. We do need to look at the structures. If we have 50 minutes as a period for PE, which sometimes can happen in our high schools, and we ask young people to get changed, we ask people to get out into the environment, then we ask them to get rechanged and go to their maths class, and we expect them to be really enthused about what they do as they sweat going to their maths class itself. We need to look at the structures within our schools to try to help out. During the school day is not just about what we do within a formal part. I would ask the bigger questions about, does our curriculum make sense? Do we connect? Does the curriculum, I would look at project-based learning, I look at some of the interdisciplinary approaches. Do we relate to the young people's lives themselves? Do we use technology smartly? In which we don't ban it and say it's a bad thing, but we try to encourage young people to do it responsibly, because they are challenged with technology. If you look at the recent study about young people who answer their phones at 2 in the morning, frightening. Maybe we should have a hands up in here, whether you answer your phone at 2 in the morning when the ping goes and it's Facebook, or it's Twitter, or it's an email. And our need to say to young people and to give them the strength to say, no, I'm putting it away, and indeed to work with parents as we do that as well. And whether or not the curriculum does relate in everything that they do. Issues about, for our senior pupils, about safe driving. Our 17-year-olds in Scotland will go on the roads. Our 17-year-olds, some of them die because they go on the roads. And so we need to be clear about that there's a relevance to the curriculum that prepares them for the world they're about to move into as well. Does it also connect to the world? Lunchtimes, I don't know if this is an international issue, but for lunchtime, some of our young people will leave the school grounds. And they go, and the kind of food that they eat really has to be seen to be believed. Probably they get 3 days worth of calorie count when they go to the takeaway. And what we're trying to do is to equip young people to self-regulate. I'm not sure if it can always be done by a school or a local authority. I've been in the newspapers. There's been a picture beside my name over, and I'm just reading it out to you, over obese 5-year-olds. There's been a quote beside my name. I think I've caused it. Obese 5-year-olds within the local authority, between 15-year-olds who are drinking, and between sexually transmitted infection. My mum lives in that community, and I have to explain to my mum, I'm not the cause of it, mum. So when she sees the newspaper headlines besides sexually transmitted infection, there are times in which you Google my name, I'm slightly worried what you would find. But it's a societal and a community issue, and it should reflect what we do. We should have a curriculum that reflects the realities of life and try to equip young people. And only when it starts to have an impact do we know that we're starting to do the right things. It should also be a curriculum, of course, that explores, that allows young people the creativity within the curriculum itself. What are we doing? What are the kinds of tasks being asked of young people themselves? Is it a curriculum based around skills for life, learning, and work? Knowledge, of course, is important, but it's beyond, as many people in here would know, the opportunity to problem solve, to be creative, to ignite the imagination of young people within a curriculum. And then I would test that to say, does your curriculum reflect it? Because by doing so, and by looking at the skills that young people are developing, this is, Carol Craig is a well-known, she runs in Glasgow, the Centre for Confidence and Wellbeing, and writes a book called The Tears That Made the Clyde, which is a bit of a reflection on how did we manage to get here. But what she said, I think, is quite profound. The 21st century skills are not just about employability. They're about the lives that we lead and about the journey of lives. And we know this, don't we? We know that the skills for life, learning and work, we know that talking and listening is not just about employability. It's about the lives that we lead, not just for young people, and equity is absolutely important, but for all of us. How do I also know this? Well, Sir Harry Burns, he was talking about statistical epidemiology. I'm going to give you 2 examples. That's Inside Out, the Pixar movie, in which has grossed over $1 billion on the basis that it's talking about disgust, fear, joy, sadness, and anger, the emotions in your head. How do we manage to do this? I would also argue that Scotland was well ahead of the game. This is a comic in Scotland that was 50 years prior to Inside Out called The Beano. And within it, we've been talking about it for 50 years. The comic strip itself talks about it, and you can't really see it, but it's at the bottom left-hand corner where it says, "What kind of idiots let their emotions control them?" Answer, Americans. We British prefer to keep our emotions to ourselves. We've known the answer, and we've known it for 50 years, and we're starting to try to do something about it as well. I bought a copy today. I went down to the W.H. Smith in the station, and I said to the guy, "Can I get a copy of the Beano?" And he looked at me rather worryingly. I said, I'm speaking at an international conference on health and wellbeing. He said, "Yeah, right." We have a national context. You've heard the national context. Getting it right for every child. Curriculum for excellence. It sets a national context for us. We believe it. We believe that it does make a difference. And we have a national framework that allows us at local level to try to take that forward. I'll skip over that, but that's where it fits within the experiences and outcomes within Curriculum for Excellence. Just in case you think I've made it up, there is a framework that goes along with it as well. Get to some of the bits that matter. I do think that when we see effective learning and teaching, because that is our business, that what happens in the classroom really does make a difference to well-being. What do I mean? If you have formative assessment strategies, cooperative learning, or challenge, or open-ended tasks, in which young people are, the move is from teacher-centred to pupil-centred learning, then young people have to work with each other. Now, of course, we've seen it done badly. Just get up and get on with it in a group. That's where the skilled teacher comes in, to set the group up properly, to make sure that nobody's isolated in that group environment. But that's really where we're starting to get to well-being of young people and meaningful learning within a classroom environment itself. Do we allow young people to assess themselves? There's a big debate at the moment. You probably caught it from Graham about we're not quite sure where we go with health and well-being. Maybe we should avoid giving them, saying it's a teacher-led activity that gives a level over health and well-being. And maybe we should be talking about what are the young people saying about their health and well-being and how we try to map that for them. Schools are pretty good and increasingly so at recognising achievement. That in your structures within your schools, that capturing young people doing well, is it in the schools' systems? Now, again, that's not to say we've got a system in place. It's really the opportunity to capture a well-done conversation. The moment that, because we're great, I often think at capturing the negative. You've not done your homework. You're involved in indiscipline. We have tremendous structures that capture that. What we're suggesting is that the challenge for us is for recognising the achievement of young people, that they feel well, they're drawn in, and we recognise what they do. And I think from a practical point of view, schools who do that really well do have an impact on young people themselves. There is a notion about developing student voice. We're all in this room, we'll all understand the idea of making rights real. I've been in classes recently, a primary one class, that had their rights and their responsibilities up in the room. They were clear about their connection to that classroom environment. They were clear they were connected to their teacher. It was absolutely enshrined in what they were doing, and you could see the evidence of why do we do it, about young people having a voice and being part of the process of their own learning, genuinely and legitimately part of their own learning itself. For us, from a Scottish context, what we do from an extracurricular situation, out with the normal classroom environment, the school trips, the clubs, I don't know again if that translates internationally, the teams that people are involved in itself, I would argue that they play a real pivotal role. Because for many of those young people, you draw them into your school environment. They play for your school team, they're drawn to your school. There's another part for us. For some of those young people that come from our poorest backgrounds, to participate in a club at night time costs quite a lot of money at a high level, or it involves somebody driving them somewhere. What this does, it very locally allows young people to build on their strengths and their abilities. You also hope that what they're doing outside the school day is brought back in. If I use dance as an example, if your school community is tremendous in dance, I hope that that's drawn into your curriculum, where you can get a positive benefit within the school itself. Why? Not just about outcomes, but for all of us, we're drawn on the memories of our own school experience. If we think here just now, I suspect your memory of school experience is not maths on a Friday afternoon. It might be. I suspect it's not. I suspect it's been your residential activity, being with young people, the experiences that you've been given, and for us to try to build on what we do within it as well. Schools and establishments can't. This is a shameless plug for Scottish writing. Katie Morag is a beautifully written book about a young girl out in our islands. It is magnificently illustrated. But what the point I'm making is young people, children and young people reading with their family really does have an impact on the whole family. I think of a joy as a parent doing that. I'm at the stage where my daughter is a primary 1 teacher. She's teaching 5-year-olds. And it's the memory of my daughter Erin, me reading that Katie Morag story, and what she was taking to her class last week was the Katie Morag book that I was reading with her as she was a child coming through. And I think that, one, I think where did time go, but secondly, that moment where we read with our children as well. I suspect, I've put in higher mathematics, that's our national qualifications of mathematics. I suspect those conversations are not there in the house, but they should be. The dialogue in a house with a young person, the dialogue with a 16 and 17-year-old about the work they're doing and how that translates into reality. Just finally, that notion, it is a partnership. It was mentioned about staff. We do need to look at how staff contribute and about their well-being. And ultimately as well, schools can't do this, teachers can't do this by themselves. I was in a meeting on Friday in which the biggest contribution made to the well-being of that young person in the classroom environment was a social worker. The social worker explaining the context of that young person's life, having been in the house, having spoken about the strategies that might work. The final thing I would leave is our continuing need to learn. We think we know many of the answers, but we probably are just scratching the surface of this. And as willing learners, and we hope that we put that at the centre. And that's really the focus for all of us. Thanks very much.